Is it me, or does each successive election seem to bring more anger, division, and even violent rhetoric, and less healing in the aftermath? A large group of mental health professionals and talk show hosts are recommending that people cut off their relatives who voted for a certain candidate. There is a TikTok channel encouraging women to shave their heads and not to have sex with their husbands for 1 year. Is this insane? Does it also seem as though our choices for all elected positions have become weaker and weaker with each cycle? At least at the federal level, we keep electing the same names until they literally die in office. Our candidates are less interested in serving than in power and wealth that comes with public service. And have we completely eliminated good character from the list of ideal characteristics? Does each election bring fewer real solutions and more labeling and demeaning of the other side? Are our choices less about who will lead us best and more about who is the worst of two evils? What are faithful followers of Jesus Christ to do about this and the overall decline of our country? How are we to react? And how much should we be involved? Welcome again to the Be Life podcast, coming to you from Canton Nazarene Church. This is episode 34. I'm Joe Palmisano, and this is Josh Potts. And Zach Richards is our producer and director and really does everything here besides us just talking. I wanted to remind you that if you're watching us on YouTube, hit that subscribe button and stay with us. It helps us. It helps you find us easier, all those things. And if you're watching us on anything else, Spotify, Apple, any other platform, follow us if you could. We'd appreciate that greatly. Josh, I'm looking today at all the things that happened in this election cycle. And I'm looking at, and I have the advantage and maybe the disadvantage of being 71 years old and seeing and being somewhat interested in politics for most of my life. So I've seen a lot of things go on. And I meant what I said about how things have changed. There used to be elections that you knew one side or the other. There was definite yes, no. They were both equally good people. They didn't beat each other up. They beat each other up over policies, but not over personal things. And we saw all this happen, and we see it with Trump and Kamala Harris, Donald Trump and Kamala Harris in this cycle. And not only them, with the vice presidents, with senators, with congressmen, with mayors, with everybody. There's just this constant, I'm good, you're bad kind of feeling. And I look at our culture and I wonder, and so the ultimate question I had was, as followers of Jesus Christ, what truly is our role in this? And we've talked about this before, but I don't think in the history of our country I've ever seen it so divisive, where women are shaving their heads and they're doing it. You watch it, and talk shows are coming out, and all these psychology groups and psychiatry groups are coming out and say, don't invite your family members who voted for Trump to come to your holiday dinner. Well, that's suddenly you're wiping out a majority of the people in the country from getting together with their family. Is it crazy?
For sure. Yeah, no, it definitely feels crazy. It feels annoying and unreal. Our election cycles in the United States are ridiculously long, years-long campaigns, spending billions and billions of dollars,
Yes.
ads on every single platform, on radio, on TV, in person. And it's so annoying and it's sickening, and you can't avoid it. And I think that's the really frustrating part. Through this whole process, I was talking with my wife that I want to just tune it out and avoid it, especially, as the season continued on. And it was literally impossible to escape it. And even when I tried to avoid commercials or ads or podcasts or videos that were talking about the subject, people in my life, they had those things popping up in their life and really just penetrating every part of their life. And so then they would bring them up in conversation to me. And so it didn't matter what I did to escape it. Politics has been all up in my face for too long. And everyone is so strongly opinionated about it. Everyone is so dogmatic in their opinions. And it's very discouraging and it's maddening to a point.
Is politics and how we react to politics, an election like this last election with Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, is that a symptom of our country, or is it the cause of the division?
Oh, I definitely think that that it goes both ways. There's a chicken and egg situation. Yeah, I think that the sort of candidates and the sort of rhetoric and the sort of debates that we have been driven to the forefront because that's what gets engagement when it comes to advertising. We look at debates. In this last election cycle, there was a staunch difference between the vice presidential debate and the presidential debate. And there were tons of complaints and criticisms surrounding the vice presidential debate because the two gentlemen seemed to be so amiable and they seemed to discuss policy and they agreed with one another at points. And people said, "Oh, that's boring. I don't want to watch that."
Isn't that crazy?
And I think
but that's how debates were.
Oh yeah, it felt so refreshing for me to watch.
Yes.
As a person who's always enjoyed politics and been engaged with that, it felt like, oh, we're getting back to some normalcy here. But then the criticisms flew about it, and that sort of debate just doesn't gain the same traction because it's not as entertaining to people.
I look back at the Nixon Kennedy debates. They were cordial. They were gentlemanly. They were just different. But the questions were designed to bring out the differences in policy, not the differences in who they are, not to get them fighting. I think of the Reagan-Carter debate. Brilliant debate, very good debate, and just cordial. And just the zingers were more of themselves versus now everybody wants a gotcha.
Yes.
They want a gotcha. They want a time when somebody falls on their face, where somebody is humiliated, where someone says something that just humiliates somebody.
For younger generations, it's a memeable moment.
Okay.
It's something that you're going to continue to see that image brought up in memes to be made fun of again and again. That's what people are really looking for in the midst of what should be serious conversation because it impacts the lives of hundreds of millions of people.
Yeah. And so I have to ask you this because you told me, and I'm not going to put you on the spot, and if you don't want to talk about it, you can. But the other day when we were texting, and you said, "I'm angry."
Yeah.
And that's unusual for you, I think, because you don't strike me. I've known you for 2 years now, and I've never seen you really angry, but you were angry.
For sure. Yeah.
It just finally got to you?
Man, it was literally election night and the next day and the day after where I saw what people were posting online. I listened to the conversations that were had at work. I listened to the conversations that were had at church. And I was just thinking to myself, like, this is just so aggravating that these people that I consider to be common sense, good people are being drawn to one extreme or the other. And that in those extremes, they're finding their identity in earthly kingdoms instead of heavenly kingdoms. And that their priorities are belittling the other rather than bolstering their ideas or themselves.
Yeah.
It's as if no one has enough confidence in their ideas or their platform to promote it without tearing down the other.
Yeah.
And that is the deprivation marketing has proven so wildly successful in our country.
You know, I have to tell you, and I admitted to you, there was, I as much as I don't want, and I said through this whole election cycle for the entire year, I did not watch anything. And I said, God is sovereign. God is in control. Whoever is elected, ultimately, how big is my God? If we think that one election or a particular candidate is so powerful to alter God's sovereign will for our country and the world, then our God is too small.
Yeah.
And so I tried to stay out of that and keep that attitude. But I have to tell you, when it came down to the last couple of days and all the ads and all the stuff and everything going on, I started getting, yeah, come on, and I started
Like you're watching a sporting event and you're
Yes.
cheering for your team.
And I started watching it. And then I'm not, you're going to know who I voted for. But then at the end, there was a part of me that was like, yeah, you people on The View, take that.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking to myself, and I had to pull back and say, wait a minute.
Yeah.
What am I
Yeah.
doing? The world is so good at grabbing you. And all the stuff and all the junk and all the and if we're not anchored every day in the Lord, I don't care how strong you are, how good of a Christian you are, if you're not anchored every day in the Lord, you're done for.
Yeah.
I know I am. I don't know about you. I know that if I don't, I'm done. And I got done. I was they captured me again. It was like I keep trying to get out and they keep dragging me back in,
Yeah.
and that's how I felt. And then it was like, oh, I got to stop. This is crazy. We're supposed to love everyone.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that some of the ads really got to me that were frustrating. Some of the ads that were spreading misinformation. And I like to think of myself as a relatively informed voter. And they would throw out these gotcha statements. And I'm like, wait, that's not true. That's a gross misrepresentation of the facts, or that's wildly irrelevant to the office that this person is running for. What does that even matter?
No.
And I would get so frustrated at that. And when I'm watching a streaming platform, the same ad would play again and again and again, every single commercial. My wife and I, we were ready to like throw things at the TV. We're like, just stop, just play something different. I actually I genuinely let out such a sigh. I almost like shed a tear when I saw an Olive Garden commercial when I was watching Netflix.
Because
it had been months. It had been months of nonsense. And then I heard Olive Garden say, when you're here, you're family. And I just almost shed a tear. I'm like, yes, thank you.
Who would have thought?
But it was normalcy for a moment.
I know.
And I was,
and it hasn't returned.
No, it still hasn't, because especially as we're moving into the holiday season, as you mentioned, the rhetoric's coming up again and again of, all right, I'm preparing to go at it with my family at Thanksgiving. What are we going to say? Am I going to rub it in their face? Am I going to call them out for the association with this people group or their rhetoric that they were spreading on social media? And everyone's like preparing to fight when they get together with their family. I'm literally seeing this all through my feed. And I'm so just, I feel helpless in the moment, but I don't want that feeling of helplessness for me personally to drive me to a place of apathy, of not being willing to say something and step into a conversation and try and disciple, try and be a mediator, try and be a proactive person that I'm called to be a difference maker, to be life in the world. That's what I'm charged with. I've been charged with caring for others, showing love in a radical way in the world. As I strive to gain wisdom and maturity in my life, I have a responsibility to model that in public spaces and in my own personal relationships. And I can't let my frustration and my discouragement inhibit my mission and my calling to do that.
Right. I wanted to get into, and one of the reasons why I asked that question, Josh, earlier about is what's going on with our elections a symptom? And I think, yes, it does go both ways, chicken and egg. You could debate those two, but I truly believe that it is a symptom of a culture that is in decline,
Yeah.
that is corrupted. And I wanted to go through and see if you agree with these. I wrote down certain things that I thought were signs of a declining culture. And I wrote down about 10 or 11. And the first one was fascination with living for pleasure. Fascination with living, sports, entertainment, lust, all the other junk that goes on, all the commercials that, everything is sold by sex and sold by money and sold by this, but a fascination with living for pleasure. When your society, that's the number one thing or one of the number one things, you're declining.
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely think so. It's almost like we as a nation state have moved to our retirement years and we're just focused on having fun.
Yes.
And yeah, it feels like we've gotten away from productive conversations and productive priorities.
Yes. And then the second one I wrote is dominance of selfishness. Self-centered, egotistical. Psychologists have been pushing, and this is what I think we're seeing the culmination of this. For a couple generations now, scientists have been or psychologists have been pushing, and educators and everything, this feeling of self-esteem. We have to increase people's self-esteem. And so we've gone so far over here. When I was a child, you went out for a baseball team. If you weren't good enough, you got cut. You come back next year and hopefully you were better. Football, everything. You got cut. And one team won a championship and the other team went home and was sad. We've gotten to this point where they try and water down grades. Some places don't even give letter grades. You don't get an F anymore. You get an improving. I've even seen the state, when they rank the schools in the state of Ohio, a school that's completely failing, a school system, they'll give improving as if, really? They've been improving for like 8 years, but kids still aren't grasping math and English.
Yeah.
And so we've done this whole thing where everybody gets a trophy. We've done it for so long with this self-esteem thing that now we're reaping that where everybody thinks that they should win an election. They should get the best job. They should do this. They should do that. And so there's this self-esteem when carried too far becomes the ultimate pride.
Yeah.
And so that's part of our society too, I think.
Yeah, for sure. I think that we see in recent decades a shift more towards that individual self-esteem rather than pride in a group or an organization, because we've developed a fundamental mistrust of organizations, whether that comes to belonging to an educational institution or a religious institution or a government body or whatever. We distrust the system, we distrust the man, but we still want to find pride in what we do. And so, yeah, you're left with just finding pride in you yourself.
Yeah.
And I think that can be a slippery slope that leads you to a place of truly sinful, detrimental pride.
And I think that's those two are dominant. The next one is materialism. Love of money. Money isn't evil. People think money's evil. Money isn't evil. The love of money is evil.
Yeah.
So the materialism and the stuff. And then I put amorality, not immorality. A lot of people talk about immorality. I think we've reached a point in our country, and maybe in the West and all the West, is that there is no morality. And by that, I mean, whatever works for you is okay. We keep pushing. We push that. As long as I don't bother you, whatever I do is fine. Well, that's good in a way. I mean, I don't want to intrude on your life, but not everything is good. And so when Diddy has these parties and people do all this stuff and people are doing things and everybody says, hey, that's That's just them. That's okay. That's okay. We've lost any sense of morality. It's all relative to each individual person's desires and lusts. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that's I think the sort of framework that you're laying out there is less definitively characteristic of our country, the American empire, as it is the West in general. I think we've just moved into postmodernism, and I think that that's a big part of it. But the other ones do seem pretty definitive to the American empire, and I think it's hard for people to hear that without becoming defensive. You have one side that's very defensive and says, "No, not my country. That's like we're gonna save that country. We're gonna take America back. We're gonna make America great again."
Ooh, I want you to stay with that now.
I think that's one side of it, and I think the other side is willing to say, "Yeah, that's all those evils, awesome, and we're going to make something new and something better with the implied mentality of what exists now can just burn." And I think that both of those are incorrect ways to view the facts and to interpret the data of a country, a nation state that is in decline. And I honestly, I think it's our lack of humility, our lack of practiced humility, that we can't just accept that these are the facts. For tens of thousands of years, every empire, every nation that's ever come, every kingdom of man has come and gone.
Yes.
And America is the same.
Yes.
We will come, we have come and we will go.
Yes.
And we're headed towards that. And that can be really scary to people.
Yeah.
And I think that in that fear, people react in a way that's not helpful and doesn't allow the change to come in a good and natural way that's really just built into the natural cycles of humanity.
Yeah. And I think the founding fathers saw that. I think the founding fathers of our country, who weren't perfect in and of themselves, they saw that. Somebody said one time, I think one of the founding fathers wrote that once people find out that they can vote themselves benefits, then democracy's over.
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
and they've discovered that. I had a couple more, and I'm just going to run through these real quick.
Yeah, go for it.
To go along with these, anger. There used to be a time when anger was sin. And now anger is, you have a right to be angry. Okay. So anger, vengeance, absence of forgiveness. People don't want to forgive anymore.
Oh, certainly not.
Loss of respect for authority. And we have caused that. We have caused that. The adults in the room have caused that. And then I'm going to put this one, and you may disagree with, decline in swift punishment. A decline in swift punishment. And then number 10, my last one was a desire for weak leaders. We want weak leaders. People who run now, think about the choices we have. How many times in an election have you said, wow, what if this person ran? What if this brilliant person ran?
There's a lot of, between the hundreds of millions of people in the United States, we have some very brilliant ones that would
who have compassion.
Yeah.
Who really want to serve.
Great, beautiful people.
Yes.
who would never run for public office.
Why?
Like that.
Because they can't win. First of all,
I mean, yeah, it's probably the biggest reason.
They can't win. And they know they can't win. There's been beautiful people in the primaries that I've said, wow, that person really has a soul. That person doesn't get any traction.
Yep. So when you say weak leader, what definition are you looking at for that weak?
Somebody who really isn't qualified, somebody who really isn't in it to serve, somebody who is in it for the wrong reasons.
So perhaps a strong personality, but weak as a leader.
Oh, absolutely.
Gotcha. And yeah, I think that's a false comparison that we tend to do. We think that if someone's a strong personality, then they must be a strong leader.
Yeah.
And I've always tried to keep myself in check because of the proverb that is, I forget how it goes exactly, but it's talk louder to seem smarter.
Oh,
there's a number of proverbs that are a different phrasing of that. But yeah, I think that the loudest guy in the room is rarely rarely the smartest guy in the room. And so I think we falsely conflate those two ideas.
There was a proverb, Proverbs 29:12. If a ruler listens to lies, all his officials become liars. Something like that.
Yeah.
29:12. If a ruler listens to lies, all his officials become liars. And I think that's where we're at. We pander lies.
Yes.
And we run campaigns on lies so that when someone gets elected, their whole rock solid platform is based on lies. And so everybody's lying. It's crazy. It's crazy. But I wanted to go through those things because my next thing then is, what are we to do as followers of Jesus Christ?
Yeah.
Are we to, I brought this up to you before, the moral majority. You remember Jerry Falwell and Anita Bryant and all these people, when they were trying to change culture, if we get enough Christian people into Congress, we can change it. We have to, and a feeling, here's my bottom line. I don't think we can save America.
Oh, certainly not. And I don't think we're called to. I think you are correct, and I think that is okay. And I think it's going to be hard for people to hear that. And it's going to be even harder to really wrestle with the implications of that. The kingdom of Jesus is not of this world. And that has been said time and again. And until we truly meditate on that in a way that we allow it to penetrate our hearts and our lives and the decisions that we make and the words that we choose to say, we need to just continue to sit in that. And I'll continue to say it. The kingdom of Jesus is not of this world. Our goal isn't to save America. Our goal is to love people, to save people to Jesus, to lead people to the Savior of the world. We have a mission, we have a purpose, and that's what I'm saying is I don't want my lack of responsibility to my country to lead to a place where I don't do anything, because I do have a responsibility. Yes. I am on mission. It's just my mission is not to the red, white, and blue. My mission is to the kingdom of God.
Amen.
And so that is going to look like supporting Americans and not necessarily supporting America, and to have the wisdom and discernment to understand the difference between those two, to care for the people of this country without caring about the legacy of our empire.
So the things that we do as a church, the outreach to people, what we're doing now with Thanksgiving dinners, what we're doing with coats and boots, and all the things that Vicki puts together, Kellogg puts together for all this stuff and gives us a vision for. That's an outpouring of love and caring for people that affects people, that changes our culture to a certain extent because of that love. But we're not fighting to legislate it. We're not lobbying for it. We're not beating you over the head because you're not submitting to it. Our mission field is each person.
Yeah. Yes. And I think that where that mission overlaps with politics is in backing policies that extend those ideals. And I think that that's where the messiness comes in. I think that's where the wisdom and discernment and maturity that not everyone has, but we should all be working towards, really comes into play. The government exists because we have 330 million people living in this country in a pluralistic society where we all have different cultural backgrounds, where we have there's a whole variety of Christianity that exists in our country, and that's only one of the plethora of religions. And we're trying to live cohesively together so that we can provide opportunities to lead people to the abundant life that Jesus offers. And in all that messiness, we still have to keep people safe. We have to get people education. We have to make sure that people are healthy and that people's needs are met. And the government has to continue to exist. And the policies that impact people's lives from my perspective, are so much more important than the candidates that are put in office and whose team they belong to. And I will rally behind an idea that is being voted on, a policy, something that will truly help the people of my state or my city, far more than I would ever rally for a particular candidate. And I vote for candidates because I think that certain ones are going to back the policies that I support. But I think having that distinction is a big thing, that my politicians are not motivating me, but that policies motivate me, because that is what truly impacts the lives of the people around me.
Let me, a question just came into my head. When our federal government was originally founded, it was very small.
Yeah.
The power was in the states.
Yeah.
Each state had its militias. It had its other things. The federal government, the authority and responsibilities of federal government were to collect taxes, to protect and serve people if in case of a national war and those kind of things. But it was very limited.
Yeah.
At that point, politicians aren't really that important because they're not controlling a whole lot of our lives. We have allowed, and see, I'm a big, and you hear my biases come out because I can't hide them, but I'm a believer in small government.
Yeah.
Reining some of this stuff in. Like, I don't know if we need EPA. I don't know if we need IRS. I think there's other ways of collecting taxes than in income tax, and that's my thing. So I think the federal government can be reined in and more power goes out to the states. In doing so, the elections, the federal elections, the way we see them now, we see these people as whoever gets elected and the Congress, they're controlling every aspect of my life.
Yeah.
And so it becomes very important.
Yeah.
As that goes, if that were to go away and go back to where it was, those elections don't hold as much importance individually as they do now. For instance, I think FEMA, we saw it in North Carolina and we saw it all over. We didn't see FEMA anywhere. When we went to the warehouse to drop all the goods off, it was a warehouse the size of probably 4 football fields, filled with private donations that private entities, well, schools, churches, were sending vans in to collect all they needed. So it was all there. And the trucks just kept coming in. And the federal government doesn't do it as well as individuals.
No, when it comes to boots on the ground making a difference in people's lives, whether in catastrophic situations like that or in day-to-day living, absolutely the federal government is rarely going to be the ones who are actually enacting those policies. That's going to be state government, but a lot more specifically than that is our local city and our local school boards
and our churches.
And yes, local organizations. I think that's where you see a real difference happening in people's lives. I think the biggest purpose of the federal government is oversight because of inequities between states. I'm very grateful to live in Ohio. I think overall we have a good education, we have a good amount of manufacturing, we have a relatively diverse economy that is both invested in legacy things as well as tech and future endeavors. I love being in Ohio. I would never want to live in Alabama. No offense to anyone from Alabama who might be listening to this. I mean, it's sketchy down there. Like they don't have the sort of they have terrible education rates, and they don't have the sort of levels of government support that we have for people who are low income, and they don't have the same sort of protections for rights of individuals. And in my mind, like, that seems like a scary place. And I know it's not, right? In America, we're still...
No, it's actually a very beautiful place.
Yeah, we're still blessed. Even in the poor spots in America, we still have so much more compared to the rest of the world and the rest of time. And I never want to be ungrateful for that. But I do think that there are inequities between states, and that the federal government has continued to grow in their strength as and their size and their reach as individual states grow and as the individual states diversify. And it's a pretty complicated matter. And I think that sometimes, rather than being informed as to what is the responsibility of the federal government versus state government versus local, we do just wrap it all up, as you were saying, these the office of president and vice president and congressmen and senators, and we say, yeah, they just hold all the power. They don't really.
But they
continue to hold more and more. And as you said, there's a large swath of Americans that think they hold far too much power. But we've made their campaigns and their offices such a spectacle that we assume that they fully impact our lives.
And it's because the federal government has grown so much. I think part of that is, and it was just an observation when I'm looking at how important elections have come and how they seem to threaten our lives. There's a reason for that. It's because, and one of the reasons is the fact that it's become so large and so encompassing of every aspect of a person's life that it truly has taken on more importance than it should.
Yes.
And it's not what was intended
for sure
when our government was founded.
And the larger and more diverse we get as a country, the harder it is for them to be effective and efficient. And so the more they want to extend that overreach.
Yes.
And so those offices become more powerful and potentially scarier when the rhetoric surrounding them is absolute extremism.
Absolutely. And that's where you get to the point where you have dictatorships and you have things like that where they just control everything. And I'm Josh, I'm just trying to. We can change people. We can change our world through Jesus Christ, individually.
Amen.
One person at a time, and collectively by a church body reaching out into the community. One thing we cannot do as Christians is say, and I've looked at 2 or 3 different things. One of the things is Christianity, you become this closeted, cloistered, monkish kind of feeling where the world is evil, the world's horrible. I shouldn't associate it with it at all.
Yeah, and historically, it's fun that you use the word monkish there. Historically, those monastic communities have separated from the world, but still been actively involved in the secular world, even though they lived in separate communities. I think that America is unique because we have, like, the Anabaptist movement with the Amish and the Mennonites, and that mentality has permeated into more denominations and more walks of life. But there's a large community in America that said, I want nothing to do with the outside world. They're not going to talk the same language as the rest of us. They're not going to shop at the same stores. They're going to avoid us, talk about every one of us as if we're the outsiders, because they're going to avoid the evils of the world. And I think that I am 100% a pacifist, but I think that there's some serious dangers in letting pacifism run its course to extremes. And I think that there are large chunks of Christians in America that have had that mentality and have avoided it altogether, avoided the world.
We've seen people like Jonestown, David Koresh, different people who have these have kind of they've gone into themselves and then they've corrupted within themselves also.
And that's the thing, to think that you can escape the sin of the world by avoiding, quote unquote, the world is foolish, because sin is innate within each of us, and it's something that we each wrestle with. And so no matter how large the community that you associate with or how small, you're still going to have to deal with those things. You're still going to have the maturity and the wisdom to deal with those things.
Yeah. And to be able to do that, I mean, Jesus said, go and make disciples of all nations. He said, go, get out, go do things. You know, I look at the apostles when he sent them out 2 by 2, and he did all that. And the apostle Paul being called to go out all over and deal with the Gentiles and everything. Christ never, as a Christian, how could you read that? How could you see what Christ did and how he taught and think that we're supposed to withdraw?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it is antichrist to have that withdrawal isolationist mentality. At that point, you're saying it's more important that I live a holy life for me than it is to be a light to the world. I think that's absolutely antithetical to the Great Commission that Jesus gave to his followers, 100%. And so, yeah, we're going to be finding a balance between us being, Christians being so politically engaged and being the largest voting bloc in our country that we literally sway elections, or the opposite of that isolationist mentality of we're not even going to identify with the secular community. We have to find a balance somewhere in the middle.
And I was looking I was thinking of things, and I was thinking of all the ways in which throughout the history of a church, our church has gotten involved in politics and gotten involved in becoming like really part of the government and everything.
Yeah.
And how that has diminished the strength of the church versus when we are focused on Christ and the gospel.
Yeah.
Versus being stuck on political power, cultural, activism, the whole thing. When we do that, we actually weaken the church instead of making it stronger. When people think that that's the way we have to do it in order to make it stronger and be relevant.
Well, I think it's interesting that you use that language of making it stronger. I don't think Jesus ever calls us to strive for a strong church that wields power. I think that we're called to be a faithful church that is committed to doing what's right, rather than being a strong church that influences many people as possible.
Interesting. That's a good point. You have many of those. You've had many today. I don't know. I'm trying to think of where to take this.
That feels productive.
One that feels like. Do you feel like we're being productive? Do you feel like we're?
I think that there's a time for grieving, and I think if we truly are feeling worn down by the political division that is in our country and that is impacting our families and our relationships in our church, that there's a time for grieving. And so even if we don't come out of this like, all right, we got this, here's your 3 steps to being an effective Christian for Jesus in our politically divisive world, I think that's okay. I think it's okay to meditate and to be frustrated and to spend some time there, as long as we don't let that weigh us down.
Well, and as long as it's not directed at a person or people. And does that make sense? I mean, because here's the problem. When you start grieving and you have that anger and you have that feeling that you need to work through, supposedly, you can't direct that at a person or people, but that's the way it seems to go, is that as people vent, and especially in the media,
mm-hmm.
as people on talk shows and things vent, and this venting should be the healing.
Yeah.
But it exacerbates the anger and so it never ends. It's a vicious circle because they're venting at people.
Yeah.
And those people aren't going to change. And the person that caused it supposedly is not going to change. So as long as you continue to vent that way, it never changes. The venting should be inward. Like, why am I upset about this? What does it mean for me? What is, and I hate this word, but I'm using it, triggering this, what is triggering this feeling in me? What is it about me that is so upset about this? And how do I get over it? It's the same thing. To me, it's the same thing as sin.
Yeah.
And coming to Jesus Christ. We could sit there and say, my life is a mess because of this person. My life is a mess because of this person or this group of people or these people or this. They did this to me. Or I could say, I messed it up myself. I didn't follow the game plan. I didn't follow the owner's manual.
Yeah.
And so I messed it up. I will never get to the point of solving it until I realize that I was the one who messed it up. In politics, this whole thing, grieving, I can do that as long as I'm productive. If I say, I'm not going to invite anybody over my house who voted the opposite way, I'm going to shave my head and I'm not going to be with my husband for a year. I'm going to get on the shows and I'm just going to find every person I can to vent about and call them names and everything. All that does is keep the cycle going. So venting is good. And I don't mean venting. Introspection, looking at the reasons for the feelings and being able to overcome those are totally different than
Wallowing. Or
yes.
Yeah. I think you can either be
Wallowing
just like
and
wallowing in
blaming.
pity or blaming. Yeah. I mean, the Apostle Paul says that we wrestle not with flesh and blood, but against powers and principalities. And I think you're right, is that no person is our enemy. And I think that that is a mentality that that no one, that I don't know anyone who's like fully there. So many people want someone to be the enemy. When we're talking politics, we think about our economic competitors in other countries being our enemy. They're not. When we're talking about war, we think about the enemy that we're fighting against being our enemy. The people aren't. As Christians, no human is our enemy ever, because they are all made in the image of God. They are all sons and daughters of God.
Mm-hmm.
There are ideas that are wicked, and there are demagogues that are wicked, and those things need fought against. But no person is ever less than human. No person is without the image of God. And I think that we need to remember that no person is our enemy. And so I think when it comes to like this specific topic, that like racism is wicked, sinful, antichrist. People who are Republican that are racist are victims of that sin, of that demon, of that idea that is bigger than them, that is wicked. Self-righteousness is wicked and sinful and destructive and tears apart lives. And Democrats that fall prey to self-righteousness are victims of the enemy. They are not the enemy that the self-righteousness is. And to separate, to have the wisdom to distinguish between the wicked ideas and the people that support those ideas, it's a hard thing to do, but I think that we're called to do that.
But we have to, but yeah, and I agree with that. But if we take anything from this program, first of all, the only true changing in a person, I'm going to say it again, and this is the reason for the podcast, is Jesus Christ.
Amen.
And by changing a culture is changed. If a culture is going to change, it's going to change because individuals turn their life to Christ. And I totally believe that. And so our mission field is to try and change one person at a time. And if we don't change the culture, I don't care. But my goal is to love, do for you. If you beat me up and you hate me because of it, so be it. I'm going to still love you. And that's not easy. And that's not easy for me, because I'm a guy who, if I was going to, I react, and I can't do that. But from anything from this, we cannot continue to put people on TV who get on there and start blaming and calling people who voted for the other person stupid, ignorant, they're racist, they're bigots, they're this. You can't label people. We cannot label people. We can't put them in a box and say, all these people who are Republican must be this. All these people who are Democrats must be this. They want us to do that. That's the thing that we're missing. The political parties want us to jump from one foot to the other. They want us to do this dance. They want to antagonize us so that we are angry and motivated. And they want us to hate the other side. I know how you think. I know who you probably voted for. I don't care. I love you. That's your thing. And I'm not going to allow the talking heads and everybody else to tell me that I've got to hate you because you vote a certain way and I don't. And that's our whole country nowadays. It's black, white, it's religion, this religion, that religion. It's this political party. And there's a reason there's two political parties.
Yeah,
there
right.
should be more political parties, but the political parties want it to be like it is.
Because that makes it literally us versus them.
Amen. It's red, it's blue, it's Republican, it's Democrat. And you are one or the other, and I'm going to hate you. I'm going to hate you if you're on the other side. And it's your fault that Donald Trump's the president. It's your fault that Joe Biden was the president. It's your fault. And I'm going to continue to hate you long after the election. And until we stop doing that, until we say, why am I so angry? I need to go in a dark room and I need to not get on social media. And that's the first thing I would tell people. If you're angry about election, get off social media completely. If you're going to heal, you're not going to heal on social media. It's impossible because you're going to get driven insane on social media.
Well, healing literally takes time and patience, and social media is all about instant reactions.
And it's all about fomenting the things that you already are against.
There's literally algorithms designed to bring videos that are going to make you mad.
Amen. And so get off social media, go into a dark room, and think about yourself. Think about what is causing me to be this angry. First of all, no matter who is elected president of the United States, if you really think hard enough, let's go back, I don't care, go back to the 80s. Has anything really changed that dramatically? Did one president turn it on its head? I don't think so. It's like, oh, we have to fix it. You've been in office 4 years. We got to fix it. And then the next guy comes in. You've been in office 4 years. We got to fix it.
Oh, yeah. If it's every 4 years, they're just countering what the other person has done.
But
it's
they
getting
haven't
nowhere.
But they don't really do anything.
Yeah.
And so what really from Joe Biden needs fixed? What really needs fixed?
Well, I was having this conversation with my brother, and I asked, he had said there's people that are they've been frustrated with the last 4 years.
What?
And that's what I said to him. Like, but practically what?
Yes. Maybe you could say the border was open. Maybe you could say that. So one person may close the border a little bit more, one person may open it. But you know what? Barack Obama deported more people than probably Trump did in his first term.
The statistics tear down both sides.
Yes.
Statistics will leave people really disappointed.
So the bottom line, and the economy has been good and bad. Stock market has always gone up and gone down. Jobs come and go.
And those numbers don't really indicate things that practically impact us, because the economy is doing phenomenal right now, according to the stock market, but that doesn't make things any more affordable for me. And so the numbers, I don't think really impact my life all that much.
So let me ask you a question then. When you look at it that way, and I'm asking all of you this, when you look at it that way, what really changes? Why do we get life or death? We're going to die. I mean, I'm hearing things this time that I haven't heard before. I'm hearing things this time like, we're not safe. Women aren't safe. I'm hearing this. Women aren't safe. These people aren't safe. Nobody's safe. Democracy as we know it is gone. I heard that before.
Yeah.
I heard that when Barack Obama got elected.
Yeah.
I heard that from the other side. He wants to fundamentally change America.
Yeah.
And I'm saying this. Stop. God is sovereign. He's in control. Also, it isn't worth it. It isn't worth. We have 60, 70, 80 years on this earth. I've got probably 10, 11 more left, but you've got a certain amount of time on this earth, and you're going to spend it angry and upset and finger pointing and putting people in boxes instead of, and somebody you put in that box, maybe someone that turns out that if you got to know them, you would love them and they'd be your best friend. I'm not willing to not to love and to miss out on the opportunity to know a Josh Potts in my life and love him. I'm not willing to miss that because I want to place him in a box and put him in a category and label him. I'm not willing to do that. He brings joy to my life. He brings blessing to my life. Zach, Logan's here. They bring blessing to my life. Why do you want to sit in a TV show, a talk show or whatever, or sit at home and scream and yell and hate people? It makes no sense to me. And I'm on a soapbox and I'm upset, but I'm upset because I want people, we're not going to heal. We'll never heal the way we're healing right now. We're not healing. We're stepping on the gas pedal of destruction right now.
If anything, we're just like shoving it down, not working through the root of the problem and just letting it.
I don't even think we're shoving it down anymore.
Fester.
We used to shovel it down.
That's
now,
true. Yeah.
Now
we all have platforms to vent it inappropriately.
Yes. And so it just completely keeps going and everyone takes sides. I just pray that I know our country's not going to heal. It's not going to get better for this. I just pray that
but people will continue on. And that's the thing. When America fails to exist, the American people will still exist. And the people who you invest in and the smaller communities that you belong to will continue to exist. And so like, don't be so, my big thing when I'm talking to people is don't be so freaked out about the idea of our nation being named something different or having a different flag. Like, we're still going to be surrounded by people. Like, get out of your bubble and go talk to people.
But if you don't have God in your life and you don't have Christ in your life and you don't have eternity in your future, you have to cling to something. And that's when you become clinging to party, nation, organization, everything. Because we're all looking for meaning.
Yeah.
And when you don't understand who created that need for meaning in your life and purpose, then you find it anywhere else. And that's when you want to hold on to yours because your organization is so much more important than my organization. And so I've got to defeat you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's the selfishness. That's the greed. That's the pride that comes from not knowing Jesus Christ. And I'm going to tell you folks, if you have not taken time to at least explore who Jesus was, if you think he was just some person who just walked the earth, look into it closely. If you have this gnawing feeling in your life that you have a purpose that's not being fulfilled, look into Jesus Christ. If you want to love people and get out of all the stuff, all the junk, look into Jesus Christ and explore him for yourself. I'm not going to tell you that you have to do that, but there's so much more to life than this anger and this bitterness and this junk that is going on in our country right now. And I, as an older man who's lived my life and experienced all the bad and all the good, I just wish I would have learned this lesson and got to know Jesus earlier in my life. I didn't, but I'm grateful that I did now. I hope that we brought meaning to this now.
I hope so. Yeah, honestly, I think the most productive thing that a person can do as a next step in response to these feelings, in response to this, listening to this conversation, is to be engaged in their community, to go to their local church and be a part of it, to join a club, sports group, to be involved in scouting, to, I don't know, whatever your group looks like for you, join a book club, be in community.
Amen.
And when you have those relationships with people because you have shared experience, because you're living life together, then when it comes to divisive things, triggering things, hopefully they'll be far less important than the relationship that you fostered with that person.
Yeah.
Inevitably, half the country disagrees with you. No matter who you are, half the country disagrees with you when it comes to political issues. There's a lot of other things that connect us beyond those things. So be in community, value those connections.
Don't let people divide us. Don't let people divide you. Don't let people on social media divide you. Don't let people on TV divide you. That we have a lot more in common than we don't. We
For sure.
The other things don't matter as much. Anyway, we love you. We're glad you tuned us in. Remember to follow us and subscribe to us and stay with us and give us ideas of things you want us to talk about. But Josh and I and Zach will continue to be here and continue to talk about things that are important. God bless you. Have a great week, and we'll talk to you next week.